Hello, hello, and welcome to Into the MoTaverse. I am Rosie Sherry, and today I have Dan Faulkner. He is the SmartBear CEO. Thank you, Dan, for joining us. It's a privilege.
Oh, please. Thanks, Rosie, for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
But yeah, it's good to catch up. I mean, there's a lot changing in the world, and I guess speaking to a CEO, I'd love to pick your brains about many things that are happening. Partly, I guess, SmartBear, but partly just the world and change and how things are changing. I think there's a lot of unknowns at the moment, and it would be great to kind of just see where your head is at with a bunch of these things. We we have a bit of a funny thing going on where we shall not mention that word, but I think we're going to have to mention that word, which is AI, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any avoiding it, but yeah. To start off, I guess for the benefit of our listeners, I know many are aware of SmartBear, but I'd love if you could give a little introduction, not just for SmartBear, but also yourself and your history and how you became, I guess, a CEO of SmartBear.
Sure. Well, I'll start with SmartBear. SmartBear is a software company. We're headquartered near Boston in Massachusetts. And over the years, SmartBear acquired a variety of different software tools and tools for software development teams. And I joined in late 2021, and I was originally hired as the Chief Product and Technology Officer. And my goal at that point was to try and kind of forge order on the chaos of lots of different unintegrated acquired companies and kind of pick a couple of lanes and try and sort the portfolio out a little bit, meaning just prioritize the products that we thought had the most potential and deprioritize the ones that we didn't. But the other thing was also just develop more of an organic innovation muscle. So don't just acquire companies, but build our own products and do our own R&D and do our own innovation as well, which I think is much more inspiring for development teams to be creating new stuff. So that was what we set about doing. And we've really landed in two big areas. The first is API lifecycle management. So I think lots of folks will have heard of a product called Swagger or Spectral or Soap. So these are open source assets that SmartBear owns. And we've built a platform on top of all of those that we call Swagger as well, which deals with the API lifecycle management and governance of the API catalog. So that's kind of interesting, especially in light of the AI topic that you brought up. Everything speaks API now. And the second area of our business is application testing. So we talk about application level testing, and we're trying to clarify that we're testing above the waterline of the code. So we provide low code, no code tools to quality teams to help them test applications, the compiled application running in the real environment, do end-to-end testing, cross-browser, cross-OS, real endpoints. And we also provide test management. We have a couple of fairly well-known products in that domain. One that's quite prominent in the Atlassian ecosystem called Zephyr, and one that's pretty well-known outside of the Atlassian system called Qmetry. So we're all about making those work together as well, so that you actually get some benefits of using our products together. And then most recently, we've really forged into, and this is exciting because it's stuff we've designed and developed and built ourselves, we forged into the kind of AI realm and more agentic testing solutions as well. So I'm sure we'll come back to that. But that's a little quick summary of SmartBear and my role. I became the CEO at the beginning of 2025. Really,
So
to
not
just
long. It's been quite
no,
new.
no. Well, I was saying to
Yeah.
a colleague yesterday, it's just over a year, but it feels like 5 years because everything's been changing so quickly.
Yeah, yeah, I can appreciate that. What are your thoughts on open source and AI? Because like from what I've seen, there's some companies that have just like gone closed source with their open source. I think was it cal.com, I think, did that recently. But then there are others who are just adamant that they're staying open source. It's the right way to stay, because like AI can literally reproduce entire software because it's open source. I'm curious, like, does that play into your thinking at the moment?
I mean, yes and no. So to be clear, we're not taking any of our open source closed source. It's all
Okay.
staying open source. But we do see that, as with any kind of new innovation, any new automation that shows up, people want to test the boundaries of, well, what's feasible now? Because there may have been something that wasn't feasible or was too much hassle to do before this new innovation came along. So it's always been the case that some companies would say, I'm going to take the open source, build some scripts and tooling around the open source, and I'm going to do that myself rather than, purchase a commercial product. And I think with generative AI, people are saying, has that become easier? Can I do more? Has the sort of barrier to me doing it myself rather than buying something commercial come down? And the answer to that is it depends what you want to do. I think what generative AI and LLMs can really help people do is get something simple, lightweight. They can get a prototype very quickly. However, if you're going to do something enterprise grade, secure, scalable, really sort of high quality, all those things that you needed to do pre-AI still need to be done post-AI. And so that the maths usually balances out pretty quickly, where people are like, I may as well just buy the product.
Yeah, yeah. Would you continue to build open source, or is your preference now to build closed source?
Well, we maintain all of those. We're the maintainers of all
Yeah,
of the open sources, so we are contributing to those and evolving those. No, we're a commercial company, so
yeah.
we're going to, if there's stuff that we build that's brand new, by
Yeah.
default it comes out as a
It's
commercial product.
yeah, yeah. Super interesting. I'm also curious, like the chaos of tools that you mentioned earlier. How many tools did you have, and do you still maintain the same amount of tools, or what has been your thinking and process of deciding which tools to keep, or have you shut any down? I'm not sure of what that looks like at the moment for SmartBear.
Yeah, no, we still have over 20. If
Yeah.
you go and look at our website, so we did close down a couple. They were just very old and they were declining, and they had a small number of customers. So the way you do that is you give people a heads up. You give them plenty of warning. You say, hey, we're gonna stop selling new versions of this. We're going to support it for a year or two. So you're giving them plenty of notice to get off something. But the main thing we did to kind of simplify our story is make the products work better together. So we normalized authentication across the products. So if you're authenticated in one, you're authenticated in the other. And then we got pretty good at sharing context across the products. So if you've done something in product A and you have product B will be aware of that as you move into product B. So it gives you kind of platform effects without necessarily being something that was built as a platform from the ground up.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. It's an interesting problem to have. I think the history is interesting but complicated. And how would you say, like, so you've got BearQ, which is your newer product. I'm curious, like you said, you took that in house and you built it yourself. Have you done that with other tools, or have most of your tools been acquired?
I would say most have been acquired, but We've built quite a few, so a load testing product, a visual testing product, BearQ, the documentation portal, like the developer portal part of Swagger, our API functional testing, all of those were built in-house. We've done, given when we started building products ourselves, I'm pretty pleased with the volume that we've created. BearQ was a different one because, of course, it was not just. It's kind of a whole new problem that you're solving. The role of the primary end user, the person sitting on the other side of the screen from BearQ, their role is very different to what it would be with a testing tool like Test Complete or Reflect. With those tools, the person who's at the UI is creating the tests and running the tests themselves or setting them up to be run in a CI/CD workflow. With BearQ, it's a team of agents that are there to augment your team. So the primary role of the person who's sitting at the UI is to supervise that team. It's to check their work, to guide them, they can go in and kind of create their own test or, mess around with data, but BearQ is actually a team of agents that are there to kind of help an existing quality team just keep up, either improve their coverage, or if they're working in a company that's adopted AI coding, it's to help them keep up with that velocity, because we think that the whole software lifecycle is not speeding up. The coding part, sometimes people call it the inner loop, but specifically the coding and unit testing step of the SDLC has really accelerated, and the others are trying to play catch up. And BearQ is intended to say, okay, well, there's going to be a big bottleneck downstream now. You're going to have testing, not just at the code level, but at the application level as well, that can keep pace. Or else, as a company, you're going to have to either give back all the velocity gains that you got from the agentic coding, or you're going to have to start sacrificing quality, because I don't think companies are just going to go and hire endlessly. They're not just going to go and add more people endlessly. I think they may grow their teams, but they're not going to be able to do it so that the traditional quality approach and quality tools will be able to keep pace. So that's really the problem we're trying to solve with BearQ.
And that's, correct me if I'm wrong, like addressing the quality gap, right? There's,
yes.
So it's like coding has gone ahead, so there's a gap with quality. But there's also a gap with everything else. Like sometimes I frame it like development has selfishly gone ahead and done all the stuff and left everyone behind, not considering everyone else, where people are perhaps struggling knowing what to do because coding has run off ahead. And it's not just quality, I guess. You could apply it to any, I guess, tech career, like DevOps maybe, or designers alike.
Design, security, governance, 100%. All of them, they'll need to catch up. And I think the problem is actually exacerbated, Rosie, because there's a lot of business leaders who conflate coding with software development. They think, well, the coding, if I'm coding faster, I should be able to deploy faster. And of course, it's just a system of constraints. And the constraints have just moved downstream. I think that what we're going to find is that people are going to either realize, my coding velocity has increased, but my actual production velocity, my ability to get applications, especially enterprise-grade applications, into production has not increased. Why is that? And then they're going to have to address those problems case by case. Or, and I hope this doesn't happen, they will just push it out there and see what happens. And there will be some major software failures due to quality. or security and or privacy that are going to make people have to rethink and really address the entire SDLC. Right now, there's too many people who own the budget who think Claude is magic or Codex is magic, and this is kind of a solved problem.
What do you think we can do as either tech professionals or, in the specific case, quality professionals to, I guess, like, obviously you're building software to address that, but like, I guess, like, there's within the community there's a certain amount of frustration. It's like we want to help, we want to contribute, or we want to figure it out, but it's just like so chaotic. No one can agree on stuff, or things are changing constantly. How can we address that, do you think? Do you have any thoughts around, like, I call it building bridges. I almost feel like we're not talking enough to each other. Like, coding is running ahead. They're rude and leaving everyone else behind. I say rude as a joke, but like it is kind of serious as well. But it's like, but the bridges aren't there. We're not talking enough to each other. We're not having empathy or understanding for everyone who left to think about what their roles and jobs are. Like, people still have to achieve the objectives that they're meant to achieve, but I just came off a call today. I was like, and one of the things that was highlighted is that we still have to do the things. We still have the same objectives, but we have to use different tools to do it, or we have to think better how to do it with different tools, whether that be Becky or Claude or whatever it is. But we still have to find ways to do what we need to do. But people, I think, at the moment are still very confused as how can we do that when things are just like moving so fast.
It is a particularly confusing time right now. So the reason I say that is I think that certainly for the first time in my career, I've been working in software for 30 years. And so I kind of saw the on-prem to cloud, or colos, and then the colo to public cloud, and then the emergence of mobile. And every one of those were major technical changes. They all took time. And even the mobile shift was really heavily gated by the advancement of the devices and the speed of the networks. So each one would become a constraint. So until 3G came around, you couldn't really have cloud-based solutions, with all the compute being done in the cloud and being connected to by a mobile application. AI's just happened so fast. It's happened so fast, and it's sucked the air out of the room in terms of all of the commentary about software, that it's created these top-down mandates that we have to do something, we have to get on top of this, we have to start using AI. I think in the last 6 months, that's turned into we have to use Claude for an awful lot of companies, Claude specifically, and maybe now Codex. And it's kind of a ready, fire, aim strategy that's going on with a lot of companies. And so if you're trying to work in that, it's very confusing, because if you're in any of those other segments of that SDLC, your world may not have changed that much, other than maybe the volume of work that's coming, the throughput that's coming to you has increased massively. The tools are the same. So I have a lot of empathy for that position, and people who are good at their jobs care about the impact that their work has. They want the product they're working on to be successful. They want the end users to have a good customer experience. And it's stressful if you're thinking, well, okay, there's this new code coming in. By the way, this code looks different because it's creating a whole new set of issues that didn't exist when people were doing most of the code. It's coming much quicker, and the environment around me hasn't adjusted to say, it's okay, like, we understand this is going to go slower. If it's just like, nope, you know the rules, this has got to get out this quickly, it's not actually a solvable task. It's literally, that's what was behind us building something like BearQ, was saying, we don't think companies are going to hire enough people. And it's also not one of those things where it's like throw people at the problem. We think you need something different that's going to be able to keep pace, that's going to be able to create room for the people who have all of those concerns, the best possible end user experience, the company they work for being successful, them feeling successful in their jobs. You've got to have something that's kind of the release valve that can do a lot of the toil or do a lot of the other work, and create the overall team capacity. I don't know if that will be the right solution in the long run, but the world is going to have to adapt. And with apologies for the long answer, coming back to your point about kind of building the bridges, I couldn't agree more with that. Then I've found in technology in general, I mean, life in general, there's a group of people who will come in with very fixed opinions, very strong opinions about how things must be done, should be done, kind of anything other than X is not valid. And that can run the gamut from people who resist AI. This is a terrible idea. We're all going to realize this is a terrible idea and things will go back to how they were, to people saying, ride or die. If you're not doing everything agentically, you're toast. People saying it's going to create jobs and other people saying it's going to destroy jobs. And the only comfort I can give people is all of those people with very strong fixed positions don't know. They don't know. No one knows how it's going to play out. Things always go in counterintuitive ways. According to the press, there should be fewer developers, but developer job growth is outpacing the market. There should be fewer in customer support. Customer support job growth is outpacing the market. So the market's acting in a very strange way. And the only way to actually make progress is, I would say, build those bridges and communicate. So within your organization and within the community, but also just try things. Just be experimental. I do think that just finding out what works empirically is going to be the best way forward. So if people can kind of set aside their strong opinions and just be experimental and try some different things, I think it will actually move us forward much more quickly than endless debate.
What tips would you give to me as a CEO of the MoTaverse, who's I guess trying to build those bridges, who's trying to think more creatively about what it is that quality people need or tech people need, or trying to build bridges? And I'm a big fan of doing community differently as well. So I'm trying to, I think we need to change as a community, and I'm curious as like, what do you think tech communities need to be thinking about doing to support the people who work in tech to build and be, I guess, prepared for the world that's coming?
I think that I think we will see, and I certainly think we need to see more empathy for those outer loop portions of the SDLC, or in your parlance, the things that have been kind of left behind while coding's raced ahead. That's a change that needs to come, I would say, from the leadership level of any company that's developing software. You've got to realize that those things have not caught up, and it's just another shoe waiting to drop. The quicker you can realize that, then you should embrace the people who are solving those problems, and you can actually have a constructive conversation. To the extent that people just insist that software is solved, anyone can be a developer, and we should be able to get this stuff into production quickly, that's going to prolong the frustration and the confusion. From within the community, for someone like you, my advice would be there's a huge amount of power in framing the issue in the people who you want to influence's terms. So we we use this thing. It's a very, very simple idea that we just adapted from autonomous driving that we called the autonomy ladder. And it helped us frame autonomy and agentic testing in a way that was very accessible for our customers. And we think, we've heard from the folks in the market who'd read it. And the idea was, in autonomous driving, there are levels. So at level 1, you have the old-fashioned car. I'm old enough when, you wound up your own window and you did all of the driving yourself. And, then you might get like blind spot detection, and then you might get automatic braking, and then you get lane assist, the thing that stops you from, or will apply the brakes if you're reversing and there's someone behind you. And then you can kind of work your way all the way up to a Waymo, that there is no driver. You just jump in and lost. And you can kind of frame development has gone on that similar path. You used to just do all your development by hand. Then you'd bring in third-party libraries. Then you'd start using autocomplete, then Copilot, then Claude Code, or even vibe coding, where you can just say, build me an X, and it will. There's this increasing level of autonomy. And the pain that we're feeling is that there hasn't been a quality. Well, we've tried to build the quality, Waymo with BearQ, and we've tried to reframe our portfolio and say, so wherever you are on this ladder, it's fine. But if you're there, where do you want to get? And how can we get you there safely? And I think the same thing applies to practitioners. I think if you can have a framework that says, as a practitioner, if I'm going to be serving the needs of the market, my employer, my own company, what types of things do I need to be thinking about? What types of technologies do I need to understand and embrace? And then how can I frame that back to, if you're in a commercial environment, how can I explain that to the business leaders in my company, so that I'm not just saying, hey, quality is still important, because that's less likely to get someone who doesn't understand the SDLC that well to act, versus saying, we need to do these kinds of things in our quality strategy, or else we're going to have an expensive failure. That conversation will probably get more traction. So I just think having frameworks to kind of enable a conversation at whatever level you want to have it is a really helpful way to do it.
The car example made me laugh, because I was just thinking of my son, who's in his early 20s, and he's like, I'm not going to learn to drive. It won't be needed in the future. It'll be self-driving. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, you got to learn to drive. But like in another sense, I'm like, well, maybe he's right, and it's a real pain to actually learn to drive in the UK at the moment. It's really hard to even get sit your test. You have to wait months and months and months. So, all of that, like, is, it's just made things difficult. And he's like, well, I'll just, wait a few years and no one will be driving. And I can't wrap my head around that, but he can. And he's like, yeah, it's fine. The world will be different. And he's almost like designing life for that way of living.
Well, here's the big difference I see is I don't think software will become black box.
Okay.
So look at, if you just take it as read, that you can say what you want in plain English, and some generative AI can build that application. And if you just stipulate that, let's say it was secure and it really worked well. There's very few people who could describe in plain English what a complex application should do, all the things that it needs to do. And if you just think about something like access and authorization, who's allowed to do what? What are the different roles of users within an application? Permissions to see data, change data. That's stuff that, unless you already work in software, you don't think about. If you think about securing your data, Is it going to be, encrypted in motion, encrypted at rest? And how hard am I going to make it to sign in to this thing, right? How secure does it have to be up front? Do I want to have multi-factor? If I'm going to do multi-factor, how am I going to do that? Those are all considerations that exist outside of coding. Those are things that you need to know and be able to specify and have an opinion on. And it can even get into the volume and type of data that you're going to be storing, and how that's going to be accessed and wrangled by the application will dictate what kind of database you want. And all of these considerations are things that you already have to know something about how software is built to be able to explain it in English. And none of that is getting abstracted away. And really the most important thing is it actually useful? Does anyone want it? Is this something that people are going to use? So without those things, you don't have anything useful anyway. And so the need for people to understand an end user and a business case and be able to translate that into a set of things and actions that an application needs to do, that can't be abstracted away or automated away. You'll just end up with endless unuseful software down that path.
So how do you, because like as you were saying that, I was thinking there's so many opportunities there for quality people to get involved in specking and designing stuff.
Yes.
That ends up contributing to the code if it's in natural language, and then it gets translated into code. And the same for security, the same for design people, all the people, right? How do you see, like, we've gone, like, I guess, from waterfall to agile to DevOpsy, and now there's like context engineering.
Yeah.
What are you predicting, at least for the next year, maybe, if we can, like, what are you predicting, like, with, like, I guess I'm thinking about teams, like, how will teams structure themselves? How will teams, like, get things done in this kind of newer way of being? Because just to add to that, like, just this week I was reading about Claude Code and shift and left in security with Claude Code, where, like, recently, like, one of the problems has been, like, these hackers. It's easier for security type hackers to find flaws in your website, and then they report them to you, and sometimes maybe hold you to ransom or whatever. But basically, there's all these security flaws that have always been out there, but they're easier to find because of AI tools. But then I was reading, well, actually, security can be shifted left all the way to when you're coding, and in Claude, it just highlights a bunch of security flaws for you before it even gets to that stage. In theory, I think it's always in theory, right? But yeah, it's just like, and as I was reading that, I was like, well, yeah, and then in theory, you can do that for accessibility. You can stamp out all the accessibility issues with an accessibility plugin that someone will probably create at some point, and say you can't ship any code unless it's accessible, and it's going to be done automatically. It's going to make sure that there's alt text, or there's tests in place to make sure that things are more accessible. But that, to me, that's exciting, right? It's like all this, like, boring work to some extent, or not boring, but all this work that can be automated, that creates frustrations for everyone in the business later down the line, is, impacts many things. But yeah, I guess in the long, what does the future start to look like if things are changing in, like, so many directions? Are you applying that now to, like, how you're building BearQ, for example? Have you changed? Do you call your software practices something different than what you used to call them in other projects?
We don't, but we have definitely adopted generative AI and agentic coding tools ourselves. you asked, how do I think teams will be structured? Teams are structured massively differently today, and I think they will continue to be. A lot of that is dictated by what's your starting point. If you're building a team from a new product from scratch, I think you get your pick of the most modern languages and frameworks and tools, and you're going to go about it one way. If you're working on a monolithic application that's 10 years old and runs on some ancient version of Java, you're constrained in what your team kind of has to look like and what your release cadence is going to be. If you have an extremely high cost of a defect in production, whether that's reputational, revenue, regulatory, you're going to structure your team differently versus if you're an early stage startup and you're basically like, well, whatever, let's ship it, and our friends and family users will let us know if there's something wrong. So you can't answer kind of here's the de facto or an idealized structure. It's always within the context of the application, the lifecycle stage of the application, the business context that you're operating in. And I just think we need to have a simplifying set of grounding principles. Like, one of those is, what's the cost of failure? If the cost of failure is low, then you're going to go down a certain path with your quality and your security and your entire SDLC. If your cost of failure is high, you'll do it a completely different way. And I think that the most important thing is that conversation happens first. And that kind of brings me back to my point earlier, which is why I'm skeptical of sort of any technology purist who says this is the way to do it, and if you're not doing it this way, it's wrong. Even waterfall or agile or context engineering, like, it depends is sadly always the answer. And that's why there's going to be a lot of need for people who understand software and how it's built. I think there's a big opportunity for people who are working in quality for the reason that you said. They've got an empathy for the end user, an understanding of the SDLC. In a lot of companies and teams, I would hazard to say in the better companies and teams, they're involved pretty early in the SDLC, and the availability of tools that allow them to use natural language to do more automation than they did in the past is a huge benefit especially to that audience, because they may previously, I'm not making a generalization or making any assumptions about any individual. I guess I am making a generalization. They tend not to be developers. So they're tech savvy, but not necessarily software developers. And this opens up types of automation that they can get a lot out of.
I would agree with that. With regards to kind of diving a bit into BearQ, firstly, it'd be good to have a little introduction into what you've built. But also, as part of that, I'm curious, how does I guess a day in the life of a quality engineer look like for someone who's using BearQ, and perhaps how is it different from what we know?
Yeah, so I'll start with just maybe a quick description of what BearQ is. We describe it as it's a team of always on agents who act as your teammates, meaning within the quality team. And to get going with BearQ is as simple as to give it access, give it login credentials. And there are this set of agents, and one of those agents will go and explore the application. And it will build a knowledge graph, basically an understanding of everything that can be done in the application, all the different pathways. Once that's built, a second agent will use some, judgment, context, pre-trained knowledge to figure out what would be useful end-to-end workflows here. What do I think would be good end-to-end tests? And it will build a testing suite and a testing strategy. So it can build end-to-end tests. It will do all of the page tests, so it'll make sure each page kind of works. It will discover the APIs that are being called as it's explored the application. It can create API tests and chain those together so you can have API tests. It will also discover bugs and defects. And then there's a test execution agent, and then there's a kind of a manager, an orchestration agent. And literally, if a test fails, the test execution agent can kind of raise its hand and have a discussion with the orchestration agent and say, like, this failed. Have I done something dumb? Like, have I hard-coded a variable, or is it a badly written test? Should we rewrite the test, or is this really a bug? And they'll have this kind of back and forth and then decide. And then the team of agents is integrated into things like Linear and Jira, so it can create tickets and write tickets back into your system of record. And over time, we will add mobile testing. Today it's web testing. We'll add mobile testing this year. We'll add accessibility, and just kind of build out the capabilities and the integrations. So the idea is, most companies don't have the full coverage that they want, but they're not hiring a ton of people into the QA team either. And as we talked about, there's this now potential wave of new features and new applications coming to that same sized team. And what we're saying is, you guys prioritize the stuff that needs to be done by people, because there's going to be human judgment that's better than what BearQ is doing. There's going to be all sorts of stuff that the people need to do. And you can point BearQ at the rest. So you said, well, how does this differ in terms of what the end user does? What the end user does in BearQ is they can go in and say, I want you to focus on this part of the application, right? Focus on the checkout, and focus on, this business flow. We've got the rest because we've got existing tests already, or this is where the team is focused, and it will do that. It will do the long tail stuff, or the stuff that you're not doing. You can also go in and, because of course agents are imperfect, and say, that test is just not right. I'm going to rewrite it myself. You just write it in English, what you want it to do, and then BearQ will just accept that and execute it. And then the other thing that you do as a user is you review the work it's done. So it'll say, okay, here's what I did today. I've run this many tests. These ones failed. I created these tickets. This is how much application coverage we currently have. And you can review that, share it, query it, dive deep into it. So it's a fundamentally different user experience to a tool like Test Complete or a tool like Reflect, which are low-code, no-code tools that a quality engineer would use. So they would go and create the tests using a screen recorder, or they would type in Reflect. You can type in tests in English, and it will automate those for you. In BearQ, you have the ability to write your tests, but the fundamental point of the product is that this team is working with you or kind of on your behalf, and you're guiding it while you do the stuff that matters most to you and your teams.
There's like almost a new role coming up that is like the reviewer role. It's a whole different mindset, right? It's like you have to review a bunch of stuff, and in some senses that's like, that feels great, we don't have to do all that other work. But in another sense it's like, interesting, now we're going to have to be that human in the loop, or quality in the loop, which I sometimes refer to as. But and then, like, I guess in the debates in the quality world, I guess people say, well, that's not real testing. How would you respond to like the objections that say it's not proper testing, or it's easy to miss stuff when you review stuff? It's easy to glance over things and miss stuff as well, right? It's like there might be gaps there that you just don't notice that you would have considered if you were doing the actual testing. But if you don't have time to do the testing, then it's like, but there's the debates, I guess, from both sides. But I'm curious to how do you respond to people who kind of push back against like, that's not real testing, or that's missing stuff?
I guess I'd ask them. I'm not being facetious here. I guess my question would be, well, what do you mean by real testing? Because if you mean I mean testing done by humans, then no, it's not.
Yeah.
If you mean it may be missing some nuance, you may miss edge cases, you may miss some of those areas for human taste, human judgment, sympathy for the end user. Absolutely. That's why we didn't build the product to replace QA teams. We built the product to augment QA teams. So I guess the way I would flip it would be to say, if you think about the portions of the quality job that must be done by a human and the portions of a quality job that can be done by an agent, do you need a human to check that all the elements on a page work? No.
Yeah.
Do you need a human to check that a sequence of APIs works? No. Do you need them to check that every single, all these different workflows work? No. You do need them to check some of those. And our belief, based on talking to lots of customers, building lots of software ourselves, is that the teams full of people working today, they're doing that work that can be automated, which takes away from their capacity to do the work that can't be or shouldn't be automated. So it's a very, very important point. With BearQ, we're not saying you don't need people to do this anymore. This is perfected testing. We're not saying that at all. We're saying we know if you've got 10, 20, 100, 5, however many folks in your quality team, most companies aren't going to say, I'm going to triple that team size. They're just not going to do it. So we're saying, how do we triple that team's capacity to make sure that everybody can safely deploy high quality software into production, given that you've got the same size team and a lot more software coming at you? The way we do that is we automate a lot of the stuff that can be and should be automated for you. And with BearQ, if there's something where you say, well, I don't want BearQ doing that, I want people to do that, you can tell it. Literally, you can tell it. Mm-hmm. Just type in a command and say, don't do that. And it will not do it.
I wish my kids would listen to that kind of advice.
Yeah.
Because just like as an example, a while back, I was kind of getting excited about the idea of like agentic exploratory testing, and thinking, wouldn't it be cool to have agents just go roam and do a bunch of things? And I was calling it like, AI exploratory testing or agentic exploratory testing. But then the debates start coming up. It's like, oh, well, that's not real exploratory testing. You can't call it exploratory testing. It's something different. It's not exploratory testing. And I'm just like, okay.
So you said, how do we build bridges? I would say that's the kind of take that's actually not helpful, because it kind of, you're immediately now debating semantics.
Yeah.
That's not really exploratory. It's like, okay, well, who cares? It's discovering, it's discovering tests by wandering around the application. Call it what you like. Yeah. Is that useful or not? And the answer is it can be. And it's okay if it's not the same thing as somebody thinks real exploratory testing is. Those two things can coexist and actually complement each other. And it doesn't help anyone to say, well, that's trash because it's not the same as this thing. And I just think software in general would benefit from more of the kind of, hey, maybe these things could work together. Maybe if we did this automatically, we'd have more time to do the good stuff, more capacity to do the good stuff. And there's no reason that the concepts have to be mutually exclusive. The reason I think that people tend to rush to that argument is because they're skeptical of automation and they think that it's going to impinge on their employability and their prospects, which is totally natural human reaction. But I would say 10 times out of 10, the people who thrive when new automations come along are the people who embrace them, figure out what they can do, find out what they can't do, and adapt. Because there's not just usually the existing value that they're providing persists. Very frequently, there are new jobs that need to be done. So one of the jobs that will need to be done, and I think quality teams are very good candidates to do it, is something that we call intent validation. And if you're building software agentically, one of the things that makes agents agents is they have latitude to make decisions on their own. And they're designed to be helpful. And very frequently, they will build something you didn't necessarily ask them to build. Because, hey, while I'm at it, I added this thing, I added this feature. And the less specified the input, the more likely it is to do that. So if you go vibe code and say, hey, build me a fitness tracker, you're giving so much latitude to the software. It's like, oh, is that going to have a step counter, a calorie counter? I mean, what kind of things are we going to include in here? Versus if you went in and said, no, I want it to not have a step counter and I want it to cover these kinds of sports, you still don't know if it's just going to make some stuff up, whether that's a design decision or something more fundamental in the logic, until you specify things at a very granular level. So what's happening is, as people give agentic coding more complex tasks, the thing that comes out the end has to be validated. What does it actually do? And that's a new step. Does it do everything I wanted it to do? And does it do nothing I don't want it to do? I know I'm using double negatives there, but you get my point. That's an important question that folks need to have the answer to before they even get into testing. And that's one of the things that we've discovered with BearQ, by the way, is BearQ will tell you what it actually does. We're like, here's the knowledge graph, here's what you've built. I don't know if this is what you wanted to build, but this is it. And so, a future iteration of it will be to go back and look at the user requirements and say, well, there's actually been a bit of a drift between, the user requirements and the thing that's come out at the end. So I think there's a really great opportunity for quality teams to get involved heavily in that intent validation. I think it's going to require very similar skills, and that kind of judgment and user empathy to say, well, yes, this is slightly different, but it's not different in a bad way. We should let this go, versus saying, no, this you really had to do a very specific way, and it hasn't been done a very specific way. I've got to send this back to be refactored. That to me is going to be a very interesting, I think, new requirement in the SDLC.
I love the idea of the knowledge graph, because I've been thinking about that a lot for quality in general. And like quality people, I've been calling it like bottom-up processing.
Yes.
Which I kind of discovered from like the new diversity kind of scene, I guess. And the idea is that a lot of new divergent people tend to capture all the details first. They see more. They look at like before doing something. They want to know how something, all the pieces of the puzzle, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I kind of think like that's what quality people should do, or are doing to some extent. Like they're trying to understand the system, the system thinking within all of it, but they're spread across many parts of the product, and they're understanding how things work, and they build up this their own knowledge about the product. But then things like a knowledge graph, like as you say, could work its way into it and give another layer of understanding of the product. And I guess like coders generally wouldn't dive into as much detail. They wouldn't speak to the customers. They wouldn't, think about the quality issues, or they're not as broad in what they tend to look at compared to quality people. Or I'm still looking for another role that kind of looks at the whole business as much as quality people can do. It's not that they always do, but they can look at so many parts of the business and look for risks and problems that might arise as a result. So stuff like a knowledge graph kind of piques my interest. Basically, is that how can we use the knowledge graph to build a better system, to know what we've actually got in our hands, to look for risks, to communicate those things to other people in the team. I think is to me quite interesting.
It's fascinating. I mean, I completely agree, and I kind of think that if you think about the level of abstraction that's been injected into coding, especially if you just to caricature it, take vibe coding. I know people aren't doing serious software with just like 2-line prompts or 3-line prompts or anything silly like that, but just to kind of caricature it, to the extent that the agent has agency, which by definition they do, to make some decisions themselves to solve a complex problem, you have immediately created a black box that needs to be unresolved. It needs to be resolved, untangled when it comes out the other end. And I can't think of many people better suited to doing that than quality teams, for the exact reasons that you just said. It's I understand this from the bottom up. I've got this, ideally I've got this knowledge graph that tells me what's here. I now have to decide, is this ready for prime time, right? Is this a close enough match? Because in the past, the product manager and the quality team and the people who are actually writing the code could be absolutely lockstep and know exactly what's been built. Now you don't have that anymore. So someone's got to resolve that kind of open switch. And I think quality are as well placed as anyone to do that.
I'm going to say one more thing in response to that, and then we're going to go for some quick fire questions because I realise the time. I was going to say that the one career role that I can think is like quality, that I often compare to being the same as quality, is actually a community role. Community is spread across the organisation. And that's my other specialization, I guess. Yeah. And I had a light bulb moment a year or two ago, comparing like what we do in community and comparing what we do in quality, and actually they're pretty much the same thing. To the extent where I say community is care and quality is care, they're both one and the same, kind of. And just going back to the knowledge part. Like one of the things that I've been diving into is like community knowledge management. So it touches on the knowledge thing, and like one of the things that I've been working on for quite a while is that how do we capture the knowledge of the community and make it more useful to everyone else. But it's basically lots of similarities cropping up that overlap with community and quality, which is, for me, it's great. I love it.
Perfect for you.
But yeah, I so basically before we had this call, I pinged in our internal Slack if anybody had any questions for you. So I got a few questions that we can quick fire-ish see how you go. So Lisa Crispin asks, how can we keep good dev practices whilst also keeping up with the pace of AI tools?
I think we've covered some of that in our preceding conversation. I think start with the context that you're operating in. If you have a really clear idea of the context that you're operating in, meaning cost of failure, whatever it's in, security, privacy, governance, quality, performance, really understanding your end users, if you understand those well, all of the needs that flow from that will still persist in an AI SDLC. You may need to get creative about how you enforce those, and you may need to be vocal about not letting them get washed away by people who maybe don't understand software that well, assuming that that's all taken care of by the AI. I do think there's some risk of that. So you may need to be a champion for the importance and the continued relevance of those things.
Awesome. And Emily O'Connor asks, your leadership team is made up of predominantly women, which is a breath of fresh air. So that's not a question, but it's more a statement. But like I would put the question of like, is there anything behind that, or is there any thinking behind that?
They were the best people for the job. I mean, that it's as simple as that. I'm love our executive team, and it is true that most of the executive team, there are 2 men on the executive team, including me, and we just have great leaders across the board. And I like it too, because I know that traditionally leadership teams are imbalanced, and I know that historically software's been a little imbalanced, or quite imbalanced, but I actually think that's improving. But I do think it's as simple as hiring the best people you can find to do the job.
Awesome. And final question from Melissa Fisher. What are you most excited about?
I'm going to keep that to the topic that we're discussing. But I mean, obviously the World Cup, but I am very excited about how this new wave of technology that's still developing, almost changing week to week, what we can do, not just with generative AI and harnesses, but agents and multi-agent systems. Very excited about contributing to how we as an industry figure out how to get the most out of that. I think that BearQ is something that we really believe in and we're very excited about, and it's a very new way of approaching the problem. And we are being crystal clear that we're not presenting it as a solved problem. We don't kind of go out and say, well, this is Claude code for testing, because it's not. It's a novel approach, I think, using the latest and greatest technology to try and help the market digest what's going to be an awful lot of software, and some of that is going to be worse than software has traditionally been. So you've got more stuff that needs quality work, and probably on average a lower quality benchmark in the features and apps that need to be worked on. So I'm really excited about solving that problem.
And is it coming home, seeing as you mentioned the World Cup?
No. I really wish it was, but I don't think it is.
We could record both versions, and then it depends on which one comes out. We could.
No, I'm pretty rested in the prediction market, but I think it's less likely than more likely. Obviously, no, I don't think it is. I think it's too hot.
Yeah. All right then. Amazing, Dan. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Really enjoyed it.
I'll see you in the MoTaverse.